Hello friends. I can see 80% of my viewers don't subscribe while watching videos. Please hit the subscribe button and like this video. Press that bell icon for notifications. And tell me in the comments from which city you are watching this video. My name is Helena Mercer, and this is the story of how one cruel moment changed the entire trajectory of my life. The auditorium lights blazed down on me like interrogation lamps. Every breath felt like swallowing glass as I stood there on that wooden stage, my 16-year-old heart hammering against my ribs with such violence I was certain everyone could hear it over the microphone feedback. This was supposed to be my moment. The school talent show. The chance I had been dreaming about for months. The opportunity to finally show everyone that the quiet girl from third period chemistry class had something burning inside her chest that demanded to be heard. Singing had always been my escape. My sanctuary. My obsession. In the shower, in my bedroom with a hairbrush for a microphone, humming while I walked through empty hallways. Music lived in my bones like marrow, essential and impossible to extract. But standing there under those merciless spotlights, with 300 pairs of eyes staring up at me, I felt exposed, raw, terrified. The opening notes of my chosen song began to play through the crackling sound system. My palms were slick with sweat as I gripped the microphone stand, knuckles white with desperate hope. I opened my mouth, and then it happened. A sound cut through the air like a blade. Laughter. Not just any laughter. Cruel, mocking, deliberate laughter that sliced through my confidence like a scythe through wheat. My eyes found the source immediately. There in the front row sat Lydia Barnes, my so-called friend. The girl who had sat beside me at lunch tables for 2 years, who had borrowed my homework, who had shared secrets and inside jokes. She was laughing at me. But it was not just laughter. Her voice rose above the music, clear and cutting and designed to destroy. "Face it, Helena Mercer," she called out, her words carrying across the silent auditorium like poison in the air. "You cannot sing. Do not embarrass yourself." The world stopped. Time fractured into 1,000 sharp pieces, each one reflecting my humiliation back at me from every possible angle. The laughter that followed her words. Oh, that laughter. It started as scattered chuckles from her friend group. But then it spread like wildfire, consuming row after row of students who suddenly found my dreams hilarious. 300 people. 300 faces twisted with amusement at my expense. 300 witnesses to the moment my heart shattered on a public stage. My voice died in my throat. The words I had practiced for weeks, the melody I had perfected in countless late-night rehearsals, everything simply vanished. I stood there, frozen, as the instrumental track continued to play without me, filling the silence with my failure. Tears burned behind my eyes like acid. My chest felt like it was caving in, like my ribs were collapsing under the weight of such complete and total humiliation. I could not breathe. I could not think. I could not exist in that moment of pure, crystallized shame. So I ran. I dropped the microphone with a feedback screech that made everyone wince. And I ran off that stage like my life depended on it. Through the backstage area. Past the other performers waiting for their turns. Out the back exit. And into the cool night air that felt like salvation against my burning cheeks. I did not stop running until I reached my bedroom, where I collapsed onto my bed and sobbed into my pillow until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen shut. That night. That terrible, transformative night. As I lay there with tear-streaked cheeks and a heart that felt like it had been put through a meat grinder, something shifted inside me. The humiliation was still there, still fresh and agonizing. But underneath it, something else was growing. Something fierce. Something unbreakable. Something that would not be silenced. I sat up in my bed, wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, and made myself a promise that would change everything. If my voice was not good enough today, I would make it good enough tomorrow. And the day after that. And every single day until no one could ever tell me I could not sing again. That promise became my religion. The next morning, I woke up with a purpose that burned brighter than my shame. I researched voice coaches in our small town, counted every dollar in my savings account, and started making phone calls. Mrs. Carmen Rodriguez became my first teacher. She was a retired opera singer who charged $25 per lesson. Money I earned by babysitting, dog walking, and selling my textbooks back to the school store. Every Tuesday and Thursday after school, I would walk the 3 miles to her modest home on Elm Street, where she would put me through vocal exercises that made my throat ache and my diaphragm burn. "Your voice is like a muscle," she would tell me, her accent thick with decades of classical training. "Right now it is weak. But muscles can be strengthened. Muscles can be transformed." And transform I did. I practiced scales until my little brother would bang on our shared bedroom wall and beg me to stop. I sang along to every song on the radio, analyzing technique, studying breath control, memorizing the way professional singers shape their vowels and attack their consonants. I downloaded vocal training apps, watched YouTube tutorials until my eyes burned, and recorded myself singing the same song over and over again, listening for microscopic improvements. But it was not just technical training. I sang everywhere. In the shower, of course, but also in the car, in the grocery store aisles when no one was looking, and late at night on my front porch when the neighborhood was asleep. I found an open mic night at a coffee shop called The Daily Grind, 20 minutes away in the next town over. Every Friday night, I would convince my older sister Maya to drive me there, where I would sign up under a fake name and perform for audiences of 12 to 15 people who were more interested in their lattes than my voice. But I did not care about their attention. I cared about conquering my fear. Every time I stepped up to that tiny microphone in the corner of that dimly lit cafe, I was facing down the ghost of that auditorium stage. Every song was a small victory against the memory of Lydia Barnes and her cruel laughter. Slowly, painfully, beautifully, my voice began to change. Not just technically, though that improved dramatically. Mrs. Rodriguez taught me proper breathing, showed me how to support my voice from my core, helped me find my range and expand it note by note. But more than that, my voice found its soul. All that pain, all that humiliation, all those nights spent crying into my pillow, it became fuel. It became depth. It became something raw and authentic that no amount of technical training could manufacture. When I sang about heartbreak, people could hear that I had been broken. When I sang about triumph, they could feel my hard-won victories. When I sang about hope, they believed it, because I had lived without it and fought to get it back. High school ended without fanfare. Lydia Barnes graduated with honors and went off to some prestigious university, probably never giving another thought to the girl she had destroyed on that stage. But I remembered. Every single day, I remembered. I got a job at a local music store to pay for more lessons. I started uploading covers to YouTube, singing in my tiny bedroom with nothing but my phone camera and a cheap USB microphone I had saved up to buy. My first video got 17 views. My second got 31. My 20th got 200. And then, my 47th video changed everything. It was a cover of Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. I had been working on it for months, pouring every ounce of emotion I possessed into those haunting lyrics about broken love and redemption. I uploaded it on a Tuesday night, not expecting anything different. By Thursday morning, it had 10,000 views. By Friday afternoon, 50,000. By Sunday, 500,000. The comments section exploded with praise, with people asking who I was, where I had come from, why they had never heard of me before. Record labels started reaching out through my YouTube messages. Talent agents found my email address. Local radio stations wanted interviews. That one video, that single 3-minute and 47-second recording of me sitting on my bed in an old t-shirt, pouring my heart out to a phone camera, it changed my life. The next few years passed like a fever dream. I signed with an independent label that specialized in developing authentic voices. They paired me with producers who understood that my power came not from perfection, but from the cracks in my voice where the light got in. My first EP debuted at number 15 on the independent charts. My first full album went platinum. I toured small venues, then larger ones, then arenas where my voice filled spaces that held 20,000 people who sang my songs back to me with tears in their eyes. But through it all, through every standing ovation, every gold record, every magazine cover, I never forgot that moment on the stage. I never forgot Lydia Barnes. I never forgot the girl who told me I could not sing. Fame is strange. It insulates you from your past in some ways, but in others, It makes everything feel more immediate, more present. I could sell out Madison Square Garden, but I would still sometimes wake up in cold sweats, dreaming about that high school auditorium and the sound of cruel laughter. My therapist told me that trauma has a way of freezing moments in time, preserving them like insects in amber. No matter how much success I achieved, that 16-year-old girl who ran off stage in shame was still living inside me. But she was not weak anymore. She was fuel. 5 years after my first album, I got a phone call that would close a circle I had not even realized was still open. I was in my apartment in Nashville, working on lyrics for a new song, when my manager Patricia called with what seemed like a routine request. There's a college in your hometown that wants to license one of your songs for their graduation ceremony, she said, her voice crackling through the phone speaker. Apparently, they want to use your version of Rise Again as the processional music. They're offering decent money for a one-time usage fee. Rise Again had become my signature song. I had written it 2 years earlier, after my grandmother passed away. It was about resilience, about finding strength in the broken places, about becoming something beautiful from something that had been shattered. It had spent 12 weeks at #1. Which college? I asked, though I was already planning to say yes. I had always made it a policy to support educational institutions when I could. Riverside Community College, she said. In your old hometown. Apparently, it's a pretty big deal for them. They're expecting over 5,000 attendees. My old hometown. The place where it all began. The place where I had been broken, and where I had learned to put myself back together. Tell them yes, I said, my heart already beginning to race with anticipation. And Patricia? See if you can get me a seat at the ceremony. I think I'd like to attend. Really? You usually avoid hometown events. She was right. I had been back exactly twice since achieving any level of fame, and both times had been quick, obligatory visits to see family. I had always been afraid that returning would somehow diminish me, would shrink me back down to the size of that scared 16-year-old girl. But this felt different. This felt like coming full circle. Get me a seat, I repeated. Preferably somewhere inconspicuous. I just want to observe. The graduation ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in May. I flew in the night before, staying at a hotel under an assumed name, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap like some kind of Hollywood cliché. But I needed the disguise. I needed to be invisible for this. That Saturday morning, I woke up with butterflies in my stomach that felt remarkably similar to the ones I had experienced before that fateful talent show audition. But these were different butterflies. These were anticipation, not fear. These were excitement, not terror. I arrived at the college 2 hours early and took my seat in the alumni section, far enough back to avoid attention, but with a clear view of the stage and the front rows where family members would be sitting. The stadium was impressive for a community college, modern, well-maintained, with excellent acoustics that I appreciated as a professional. As the rows filled up around me, I found myself scanning faces, looking for something, someone. I was not sure what I expected to find, or even what I hoped to find. And then the processional began. The opening notes of Rise Again filled the stadium, my voice soaring through the sound system with crystal clarity. The song had been professionally mastered for this kind of venue, and it sounded magnificent, rich and full and powerful. I felt goosebumps rise on my arms as I heard my own voice echoing through the space, where 5,000 people sat in respectful silence. This was my voice, my words, my story of resilience and triumph, providing the soundtrack for one of the most important days in these young people's lives. The graduates began their march down the aisle, cap and gowned, faces glowing with pride and accomplishment. I smiled as I watched them, remembering my own graduation, my own dreams, my own hopes for the future. And then I saw her. Front row, third seat from the left. Lydia Barnes. Older now, obviously. Her hair was shorter, streaked with early gray. She wore a navy blue dress and clutched a program in her hands. Her eyes were fixed on the processional, scanning the approaching graduates with the intense focus that only a parent can maintain. My heart stopped. After all these years, all this success, all this distance from that terrible night, seeing her face brought it all rushing back with devastating clarity. But this time, I was not a scared teenager. This time, I was the voice filling this stadium. This time, I held all the power. I watched as she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, clearly emotional as she waited for her daughter to appear. The irony was not lost on me. She was crying to the sound of my voice, moved by the very thing she had once mocked so cruelly. And then I saw her, the graduate she was waiting for. A young woman who looked remarkably like her mother, walking with quiet dignity down the aisle as my voice soared overhead, singing about rising from ashes, about finding strength in broken places, about becoming more than anyone ever thought possible. The girl, Lydia's daughter, was walking across this stage to the sound of everything her mother had told me I could never be. I do not believe in fate, exactly, but I believe in justice. And this felt like the universe finally balancing its scales. As the ceremony continued, I found myself unable to look away from Lydia. She applauded when her daughter's name was called, took pictures as she walked across the stage, glowed with maternal pride in a way that was both touching and completely surreal. She was experiencing one of the most profound moments of her life, to the soundtrack of mine. When the ceremony ended and the stadium began to empty, I remained in my seat, uncertain of my next move. Part of me wanted to slip away quietly, to let this moment of poetic justice exist without confrontation or explanation. But another part of me, the part that had spent years carrying the weight of her cruelty, that part needed something more. I waited until most of the crowd had dispersed, then made my way down toward the front section where families were taking photos and sharing congratulations. Lydia was hugging her daughter, both of them laughing and crying simultaneously in that way that only happens during life's biggest moments. I approached slowly, my heart hammering but my steps steady. When I was about 10 feet away, she turned. Our eyes met, and I watched as recognition dawned across her features like sunrise. Her face went through a series of rapid changes: confusion, realization, shock, and finally something that might have been shame. "Helena," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crowd noise around us. "Hello, Lydia." Her daughter looked between us, clearly sensing the tension, but not understanding its source. "Mom, who is this?" Lydia's mouth opened and closed several times before she managed to speak. This is Helena Mercer. We went to high school together." The daughter's eyes widened. "Helena Mercer? Like the singer? The one who sang at our graduation?" I smiled, keeping my expression neutral but not unkind. "That would be me." "Oh my God." The daughter grabbed my arm with the enthusiasm only a 22-year-old can muster. "You're amazing. That song. It gave me chills. It was absolutely perfect for today. I cannot believe you're here." "I wouldn't have missed it," I said, my eyes never leaving Lydia's face. "It's not often you get to see your work appreciated by people who matter." Lydia flinched at the subtle emphasis, understanding exactly what I meant. Her daughter continued gushing, asking for selfies and telling me how much my music meant to her generation, completely oblivious to the subtext crackling between her mother and me. Finally, she excused herself to find friends, leaving Lydia and me alone in the thinning crowd. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "Helena, she began, then stopped, shaking her head. "I do not even know what to say." "You do not have to say anything," I replied calmly. "I am not here for an apology. I am not here for closure. I am just here to witness this moment." "What moment?" I gestured toward the stadium, toward the stage where her daughter had just graduated, toward the speakers that had carried my voice to every corner of this space. "The moment when the girl you told could not sing provided the soundtrack to the most important day of your daughter's life." She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they were wet with tears. "I was terrible to you," she whispered. "I was 16 and cruel, and I said things that—" She trailed off, unable to finish. "You said things that changed my life," I completed for her. "You were right about that." She looked confused. "Right. My voice was not good enough that day," I said, my tone matter of fact. "You were not wrong about that. But what you were wrong about was assuming it would always be that way." I paused, letting that sink in. Every lesson I took, every hour I practiced, every small stage I conquered, It all started with proving you wrong. So in a way, I should thank you. Helena. Your daughter seems lovely, I continued, not letting her interrupt. She has good taste in music. And she clearly has a mother who loves her very much, who will be there to support her dreams instead of crushing them. The barb hit home. I could see it in the way her shoulders sagged, in the way her breathing became uneven. I hope she never has to learn what it feels like to have someone she trusts tell her she cannot achieve her dreams. I hope she never has to rebuild herself from the ground up because someone decided to tear her down for entertainment. I was a child, Lydia said desperately. I was 16 and stupid and I did not understand. I was 16 too, I said quietly. But I was not cruel. She broke down then, really broke down. Years of guilt and regret pouring out in ugly, gasping sobs. People around us began to stare. And I realized this conversation had gone far enough. I should go, I said, taking a step back. Congratulations on your daughter's graduation. She should be proud of what she's accomplished. As I turned to leave, Lydia grabbed my arm. Helena, please. I am so sorry. I am so sorry for what I did to you. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back up at her tear-streaked face. I know you are, I said gently. But your apology cannot change what happened. It cannot give me back the years I spent believing I was not good enough. It cannot erase the nights I cried myself to sleep because someone I trusted decided to humiliate me. I paused, letting her hand fall away from my arm. But here's what it also cannot take away. Everything I became because of it. Every song I have written, every stage I have conquered, every person who has been moved by my voice. None of that would exist if you had not pushed me to prove you wrong. I smiled then, and it was genuine. So maybe I should thank you after all. Maybe that cruel 16-year-old girl did me the biggest favor of my life. I walked away then, leaving her standing alone in that emptying stadium, surrounded by the echoes of my voice and the weight of choices made long ago. As I drove back to my hotel, windows down, my own music playing softly on the radio, I realized something had shifted inside me. That frozen moment from my teenage years. That amber-preserved trauma that had driven me for so many years. It had finally thawed. I was not that scared 16-year-old anymore. I had not been her for a very long time. I was Helena Mercer, the singer whose voice had filled stadiums and broken hearts and lifted spirits. I was the woman who had taken the worst moment of her adolescence and transformed it into a career that had touched millions of lives. And today, for the first time, I truly understood that the best revenge is not hurting the people who hurt you. The best revenge is becoming everything they said you could never be. My voice had spoken for itself today, in the most elegant way possible. It had filled that stadium with beauty and power and emotion, providing the soundtrack for dreams coming true and futures beginning. And Lydia Barnes had sat in the front row, tears streaming down her cheeks, applauding her daughter's achievement to the sound of everything she had once mocked. I did not need to say another word. My voice had said it all. That evening, I called my manager from my hotel room. Patricia, I want to start a scholarship fund. Okay, what kind of scholarship fund? For young artists who have been told they are not good enough. Kids who have been knocked down and need help getting back up. I want to call it the Rise Again Foundation. That's beautiful, Helena. What made you think of it? I looked out my hotel window at the small town where my journey had begun, where a cruel moment had become the catalyst for everything I had achieved. Someone reminded me today that our worst moments can become our greatest strengths. I want to help other kids learn that lesson without having to suffer as much as I did. 3 months later, the Rise Again Foundation awarded its first scholarships to 12 young artists across the country. Each recipient received not just financial support, but mentorship, training opportunities, and most importantly, the message that their dreams were valid and achievable. One of the scholarship recipients was a 17-year-old girl from Ohio who had been told by her high school music teacher that she should consider a more realistic career path. Another was a 20-year-old boy from Texas whose parents had refused to support his artistic ambitions, telling him that music was not a real job. Each story was different, but they all had one thing in common. Someone had tried to silence their voices. And now, they would have the tools to make those voices heard. As I read through their applications, their essays about overcoming discouragement and holding on to dreams despite the odds, I thought about that 16-year-old girl who had run off a high school stage in tears. She had no way of knowing that her moment of deepest shame would eventually become her greatest triumph. She could not have imagined that the cruel laughter of one night would fuel a career that would bring joy to millions. She had no idea that the person who hurt her most would someday sit in an auditorium, moved to tears by the very voice she had mocked. But that is the thing about resilience. It does not ask permission. It does not announce itself. It simply grows, quietly and persistently, in the dark spaces where we think nothing can survive. My name is Helena Mercer. I am a singer, a songwriter, and someone who learned that the most powerful response to cruelty is not cruelty in return. It is becoming so undeniably successful, so impossibly authentic, so completely yourself that no one can ever again tell you what you cannot do. My voice fills stadiums now. It tops charts and wins awards and provides soundtracks for the most important moments in people's lives. But more than that, it speaks for everyone who has ever been told they are not enough. It rises for everyone who has ever been knocked down. It sings for everyone who has ever had to rebuild themselves from broken pieces. And every time I step onto a stage, every time I open my mouth and let my voice soar into the darkness, I remember that 16-year-old girl who thought her dreams had died in a high school auditorium. She was wrong. They had just been planted. And now, they bloom in four-part harmony, in sold-out venues, in scholarship funds that lift up the next generation of voices waiting to be heard. Lydia Barnes thought she was silencing me that night. Instead, she gave me something to sing about for the rest of my life. And for that, I am grateful. Because the sweetest songs are born from the sourest moments, and the strongest voices are forged in the fires of those who tried to break them. My voice said it all that day at the graduation ceremony. But if it had not, these words would have been enough. I am not the girl you told could not sing. I am the woman whose voice you will never forget. And that is a song worth singing. If this story of resilience and triumph touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales of overcoming adversity and finding your voice. Your support helps us share stories that matter and reminds us all that our dreams are worth fighting for. Hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments about a time when you proved someone wrong about your abilities.